And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 53. This is the week 2 recap episode. What do we call this? Close but no cigar? We almost had him? I don't know. We'll continue to work on the name as we go. But in this week 2 matchup, game of the week by far, I think, in the NFL this week, our Cincinnati Bengals unfortunately came up just 1 point short of ultimate victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs won in Kansas City 26-25 in a nail-biter that went back and forth all the way throughout the game. It looked for a brief moment that the Bengals were going to be able to put the Chiefs away and seal up a victory on the road, but it just wasn't meant to be. But it was a very exciting, enjoyable game to watch. A lot better, a lot more entertaining, and a lot better football from the Bengals' point of view than we saw last week against the Patriots. So this was at least a step in the right direction from a Bengals perspective and just a football fan's perspective. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. You can go check out episode 0 where I covered who I am, what this show is all about, why I'm making it. But basically, I'm a former college football player, lifelong fan of the Bengals, lover of Bengals podcasts and content, and listening to a lot of Bengals podcasts and other shows for other teams because I'm a football fan in general. So I like listening to and watching lots of football games for other teams. And just overall, I felt like there are a lot of podcasts, but none of them necessarily resonated with me or what I was thinking or what I would necessarily agree with. So I wanted to make my own podcast. Obviously, I'm going to agree with the things that I'm saying on my own podcast. So I wanted to make a show that maybe had a little bit different perspective, a little bit different spin on things. One of the things that I felt was missing from a lot of other podcasts was just talking through the game in a chronological order and retelling the events as they played out. Nothing against any other podcasts. They all do a great job in their own way, but I felt like a lot of them covered everything on more of a surface level. A lot of times they'll give you like a 5-minute summary of the game. They'll talk about a few moments that happened in the game, maybe throw out a couple of headline statistics, but if you didn't actually watch the game, you wouldn't understand what happened. So that's what I'm thinking about is, if you're on a long drive or you're at work, and a lot of people, they have to work, they have other stuff going on Sundays where they can't necessarily watch the game, but they like listening to podcasts. And so hopefully by listening to this podcast, you'll be able to get some sense of what happened from my perspective. Obviously, I'm not on the field, I'm not a coach, I'm not a player, but from sitting in my living room watching the game, you can kind of relive it through my eyes. But like I said, episode 0 is where you want to check out more about me. Check out episode 1 if you're completely brand new to the game of American football, which most of you probably are not, but if you are, you can go back and check that out where I gave a painstakingly long description of American football. If you're a long-time listener, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, give me a thumbs up. Send me an email to the email address bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com so I can read your comment on the show and you can tell me how wrong I was with all my horrible takes. But in this episode, like I said, we're going to break down this game. We're going to talk about what we were expecting. And that's mostly what we talked about in the last episode, the preview episode. We broke down what we were anticipating looking at going into this game. So you can go back and check that out if you really want to deep dive. But this was going to be a highly anticipated game. It felt like this was the one that the Bengals really had circled on their calendars all off season. And maybe they got a little bit ahead of themselves. You could call basically last week was what they call a trap game against New England. Bengals, they overlooked their opponent last week. In their minds, they were probably thinking of, 1 week ahead at the Kansas City Chiefs and didn't really put enough focus on the New England Patriots game. But in this game, you could tell Bengals came out completely different mindset, totally looked like a different team, came out ready to play, had a different game plan. So this was encouraging, and hopefully the type of performance that the Bengals put on in every game going forward. Hopefully they woke up from whatever hibernation they were in the offseason and finally got started in week 2. And in that last episode, one of the things that I discussed was some of the key matchups, key things to watch coming into this game against the Chiefs. And one of the first things I said was Trey Hendrickson, Bengals right defensive end. Is he going to be able to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes while he's trying to pass and take advantage of their rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, for the Chiefs? And that is exactly what ended up playing out in this game. Trey Hendrickson had a huge game. He ended up having 2 sacks, a bunch of pressures on Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs ended up eventually having to bench the rookie because he was just, they can't let Patrick Mahomes, their franchise quarterback, be getting annihilated every snap by Trey Hendrickson. So in order to keep Patrick Mahomes upright and alive for the rest of the game, they had to get the rookie out of there. But that was one of the big things that we were watching, and nobody else got any real pressure on Patrick Mahomes, but Trey Hendrickson was able to do enough on his one-on-one matchup that it made a big difference in the flow of this game. I can't say the outcome of the game because, as we talked about, in the end, the Chiefs got the better of the Bengals. But let's talk about how we got there first. But going into this game, everybody was talking about this one all week. This was going to be the headline matchup. Everybody was all excited. And this was the 4:25 CBS standalone game. So you knew this was going to be a highly viewed game just in terms of viewership. And after the game, it did come out that this was the most viewed television program since the previous Super Bowl. So more watched than the Olympics, more watched than anything else going on basically since last February. Everybody was watching this game. Every team, in the fans at Arrowhead Stadium were all pumped up. It was kind of like the equivalent of what the Bengals had for their orange out, except in Kansas City it was all red. It was a sea of red in Arrowhead, and all the fans were very loud throughout the game, as they normally are at Arrowhead. It's notoriously one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL, so the Bengals were having to go on silent snap counts and deal with some of the the raucous crowd and all that. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job. They had I think 1 false start penalty in the game on Trent Brown, but otherwise they were able to handle the noise. But the other thing I talked about in the previous episode was the fact that going into the Patriots game, the Bengals offense seemed like it didn't have any real direction. I didn't even know what the game plan was. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they had developed a game plan around the idea that T. Higgins, their star wide receiver, was going to be healthy and available to play, and he was going to play a big role in their offense. When he went down with a hamstring injury on Thursday practice, that threw a big wrench in what they were planning to do. They had to all of a sudden change everything up. Okay, now we're not going to have T, and Jamar was coming back from holding out or holding in or whatever you want to call it with his contract dispute. And Jamar apparently had food poisoning on Friday night or something. So Jamar wasn't maybe 100% prepared and feeling healthy, and they had T. Not a good recipe for the Bengals last week. So this week, they knew in advance T. Higgins wasn't going to play just because he hadn't practiced all week. And that meant that the Bengals coaches had more time to devise some kind of scheme. And what we saw this week was, without T, the Bengals utilized their tight end group a lot more so than the Bengals have ever used tight ends in Joe Burrow's career. That doesn't necessarily say a whole lot for the tight ends that the Bengals have had in Joe Burrow's career so far, but in this game, the Bengals tight ends were extremely incorporated in the offense. They combined for a total of 14 catches for 151 yards. A lot of big plays from all the tight ends, minus Tanner Hudson. But even surprisingly, Eric All, the rookie tight end out of Iowa and Michigan before that, Eric All got more snaps in this game than Mike Gesicki. So that was an interesting changeup. He didn't, he got some playing time, but we weren't even sure if Eric All was going to be able to play because he's coming back from an ACL last November. All of a sudden, he's getting, right behind Drew Sample, second most snaps at tight end for the Bengals. So to that point, when the game kicked off, Bengals, I guess they lost the opening coin toss, so they received the kick first. Chiefs received the second half kickoff. So the Bengals got the ball first. And on the first play, Bengals came out with 3 tight ends. They had Drew Sample, Eric All, and Mike Gesicki all on the field at the same time. So I was talking, when the Bengals first made their rosters, I was like, do they really need 5 tight ends on the roster? But if they're going to be playing with 3 tight ends on the field at the same time, I guess they really do need that many tight ends. This play was good design. It's one of the things, it's Drew Sample is kind of a double-edged sword because the Bengals will design plays for Drew Sample because the other team's defenses don't guard him because he's not fast. And so it's kind of a weird paradox because they drop these plays for Drew Sample. He catches it, and then he can't really go anywhere. So the other team is not really defending him that hard, but it's not really that big of a threat because he's just Drew Sample. So on this play, he caught the ball around the line of scrimmage. 1st and 10, he caught the ball around the line of scrimmage, picked up a few yards, and then fumbled the ball as he was getting tackled out of bounds. And it was close. So this is the first play of the game. Drew Sample fumbled the ball, and the Chiefs were very close to recovering it. But luckily for the Bengals, the ball went out of bounds, and it stayed in their possession. But I was already freaking out. First play of the game, I'm like, Drew Sample, you cannot fumble on the first play of the game against the Chiefs. So luckily, things went better from there for the rest of the drive. They ended up actually picking up another pass to Drew Sample the next play for a 12-yard gain over the middle. And I was thinking, okay, let's not push our luck with too much Drew. I don't want Drew Sample to be like the featured receiver in this offense. But yeah, that was the type of day it was for most of the day. Tight ends, this was their day. 1st and 10, Bengals got a short run. Zach Moss up the middle for basically 1 yard. Not a whole lot on the running game, as we've come to expect, unfortunately, for the Bengals. Especially early in the game, they try to run the ball, usually up the middle, and they get like 1 or 2 yards, and it slows up their drives. This game, at least, there was a little bit more variation in the types of runs that the Bengals attempted. Like if you look at the next-gen stats, Zach Moss, run plays, running chart, like they chart out all the different runs and the path that he took to get there. In the Week 1 game against the Patriots, like 9 out of 10 runs for Zach Moss were off Alex Kappa, right guard, like straight up the middle. This run Zach Moss against the Chiefs hit a lot more runs inside, outside, left, right. It was more varied, but he didn't have a ton more success, but it was at least more varied up in the type of runs that they had. But in this drive, 2nd and 9, Joe Burrow completed a short hitch to Jamar Chase. 3rd and 3, Joe Burrow was scrambling around, incomplete pass to Trenton Irwin over the middle. Ball was batted down by middle linebacker Nick Bolton. And we've seen that a couple times on Joe Burrow passes. There was a pass last week to Tanner Hudson across the middle that got swatted down. So that's not out of the ordinary, but, players, it seems like, are maybe able to time up Joe Burrow's throws and bat them down. Luckily, they haven't been intercepted yet, but that's just one thing to watch. So that brought up 4th and 3, and it was at the Kansas City 43-yard line. That's too far, if they 43 add on like 7 for the snap, so it's like a 60-yard field goal from that point. Probably a little bit too far at the beginning of the game to try a 60-yard field goal. And at the same time, you're at the 43-yard line of your opponent. It's too close to punt. So I was surprised that the Bengals went for it on 4th and 3 right here. I was actually thinking that they would punt it away, try to play field position. But as Zach Taylor has learned from playing the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, you have to put your foot on the gas, and you can't give them too many opportunities on offense to score points on you. Like, if you have a chance to score points, you've got to try to capitalize on it. So 4th and 3, Bengals roll the dice, and they had a well-designed play. They picked up the blitz and hit tight end Mike Gesicki coming on a pass over the middle, and he was wide open. The guy who was guarding him kind of slipped and fell down, and Gesicki, I guess you could say, turned on the jets or whatever jets that he has left. He turned them on. Kind of like you hear the Voyager satellite out in space for like 50 years. They finally figured out how to turn on the thrusters after like 20 years of not being used at all. That's what Mike Gesicki looked like running down the field. He hasn't been using the wheels in a while, but he opened it up, got 37 yards on 4th and 3, all the way down to the Kansas City 6-yard line. 1st and goal at the 6. Bengals got 2 yards. Zach Moss up the middle. 2nd and goal from the 4. Incomplete pass to Jamar Chase. It was a good play by the Chiefs cornerback, Trent McDuffie. He was one-on-one with Jamar Chase on the slant route. Jamar didn't get a lot of separation on the route. He didn't really fake like he was going out. He just ran basically a straight-up slant, didn't have any kind of fake moves, so Trent McDuffie was able to stay pretty much right on him. Joe Burrow threw a decent pass. Maybe he could have put it a little bit more out in front of Jamar so that Trent McDuffie didn't have a chance to break it up, but McDuffie got in there, put his arm out, and broke up the pass. Good play by him. That brought up 3rd and goal. On 3rd down, Joe Burrow tried to scramble around, couldn't find anybody, had to throw the ball away before he got sacked. So Bengals had the ball at the 4-yard line, 4th and goal, and did not decide to go for it. Didn't go for a touchdown, settled for an Evan McPherson 22-yard field goal to take the lead, go up 3-0. I know Zach Taylor always mentally, it doesn't matter if it's, a 1-point lead or a 100-point lead. As long as they have the lead, Zach Taylor thinks they've got the momentum. So they kick the field goal, they get the momentum, and whatever. So Chiefs get the ball back, and the Chiefs answer the Bengals' first drive, which was 10 plays, 66 yards, took almost 4.5 minutes off the clock. Chiefs answered the Bengals with a 16-play, 69-yard drive, nice, for 8.5 minutes, which ended up in a field goal as well. But there were a lot of positive chunk plays after play after play, but obviously the Bengals did it just enough near the end of this drive to hold them to a field goal as well. But the thing that was concerning about this and what we had feared as Bengals fans was the Bengals' interior defensive line wasn't able to put up much of a fight, especially on this first drive, stopping the run. It seems like it was the running backs for the Chiefs, Pacheco and Carson Steele, I think he's a rookie. The two running backs, they were just 9, if we look at 9 yards, 9 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards, 6 yards, just running it straight at the Bengals, picking up first down after first down. And so that was concerning because it was oh man, the Bengals couldn't stop the Patriots running the ball last week. Here we go again. In this game, they can't seem to stop the run. And, jumping ahead, the Chiefs ended up in this game doubling up the Bengals in rushing yards again. Bengals had 75 rushing yards to the Chiefs, 150 basically. And last week, the Patriots got 170. So Bengals, I guess, did better this week, getting them down to 150 from 170. But still, it's not great when the opponent has double your amount of yards running the ball. Bengals defense, as they got closer to their own goal line, they stiffened up and did a better job of tackling. Chiefs actually had to go for 4th and 1 at the Bengals 3-yard line. They picked up the first down, so they got a 1st and goal at the Bengals 2-yard line. But then that's when the Bengals defense really stepped up. Sheldon Rankins and Logan Wilson made a tackle on 1st and goal for no gain on Pacheco. Chiefs tried Pacheco up the middle again. Again, Sam Hubbard and J. Tufele this time combined for a tackle for no gain. Sam Hubbard was pumped up, and Sam Hubbard played a better game in this one than he did in week 2, like a lot of the Bengals players did. Like Trent Brown on offense, he played better than he did in week 1. So I don't know what it was. Maybe these veteran guys, they just needed a week to kind of get the motor going, get things going back up. But Sam Hubbard looked like he had more juice in this game. 3rd and goal, Chiefs did a pass, short pass, but again, Von Bell and Jermaine Pratt were there to make a stop for a 1-yard gain. So the Chiefs had it 4th and goal at the Bengals 1-yard line. And surprisingly, instead of going for the touchdown, 4th and goal at the 1, Chiefs decided to kick a field goal and tie it up right there. That was a little bit surprising, but Andy Reid is like notoriously conservative, and I know Chiefs fans probably hated that, to kick a field goal when you're at the 1-yard line. But I guess because they had it 1st and goal at the 2, and they tried 3 plays and only got 1 yard, they didn't feel like, obviously he had used all the plays he thought would work, and they didn't work the first 3 times. So, it doesn't make a sense to try it again the 4th time, so I kind of understand it. So Chiefs decided to go for the tie at that point. It was 3-3 with 2 minutes left to go in the first quarter. After the Chiefs kicked the field goal, we got to see, I think this was the first Bengals kickoff return of the season, or at least the first one in this game. And most of the kicks so far, the other team has kicked them out of the end zone. Touchback, no return. They got these new rules in place. They've explained them like ad nauseum, it seems like, at this point, but they're trying to get more kickoff returns. And so the Chiefs, the Bengals had their normal return guys out there. They had Chase Brown and Travion Williams. They're 2 running backs out there. And Chase Brown is probably what I would describe the more dynamic. He's definitely the faster out of the 2. Between Travion and Chase Brown's the faster one. If I needed to have one guy returning, I would rather it be Chase Brown, which is exactly why the Chiefs kicked it to Travion instead of Chase Brown. They knew, okay, if we have a choice, let's kick it to Travion. And Travion tried to return it, but he only got out to about the 22-yard line. Let's see, where did they start there? 24. Okay, so it was 20-yard return from Travion, but Travion didn't even make the first guy miss. That's the thing. I think if you're an NFL player, one guy shouldn't be able to just tackle you out in the open field. But that's exactly what happened. Is Travion got it, ran forward for a few yards, and then the first guy that came on him just tackled him, and Travion tried to jump out of the way, but it didn't work at all. So it was a good strategy by the Chiefs, because if the ball had been downed for a touchback, it would come out to the 30-yard line. Instead, it went to the Bengals 24. Not a huge difference, but it's a game of small margins. I wish, because I haven't seen Travion. I know I'm down on Travion, but this is his 6th year in the NFL. So far, we haven't seen him do much of anything when he's had the ball in his hands, either as a runner or as a receiver or as a returner. But for some reason, the Bengals continue to put him out there and let him touch the ball, which I don't get personally, because he hasn't really shown that he's able to do much with it. So I would rather see somebody I think maybe they put him out there because they don't want to risk injury for somebody who's going to play more snaps on offense. I would rather see somebody like Andrei Iosivas, who's he's got, number one, he got more speed than Travion, but he's bigger than Travion, so he could possibly break through the line, do something with it with the ball in his hands. Or even, I know Charlie Jones isn't very big, so he probably wouldn't be able to break too many tackles. But I don't know. Just Travion returning kicks doesn't do it for me. So I would anticipate a lot of teams, if they want to kick it off, they're going to kick it to Travion too, because the same thing is probably going to happen. But anyway, after that return, we got the false start penalty on Trent Brown that moved the Bengals back an additional 5 yards. They had 1st and 15 from their own 19-yard line. Then Joe Burrow had a pass incomplete over the middle to Andrei Iosivas, maybe a little bit behind him, but Andrei looked like he got his hand on it, so he wasn't able to bring that one down. There's a couple plays like that with Andrei. I think we'll probably cover it in a later play, but a couple plays, Andrei got his hand on it, had an opportunity to make the catch, but he wasn't able to. But Andrei did make a couple of big plays later in this game, so kind of made up for it. But the rest of this drive, 2nd and 15, they had Zach Moss run on the right end for 6 yards. That brought up 3rd and 9. On that 3rd and 9, Joe Burrow didn't find anybody to throw it to, scrambled around, avoided the sack, but was only able to pick up 3 yards before the Chiefs tackled him. That brought up 4th and 6 and a Ryan Rico punt from the Bengals. This was the Bengals' first punt of the game, and this was interesting just because of the punting matchup. I forgot to mention that, but the Bengals have even after this game, Bengals have the top rated punters, statistically speaking, in terms of yards, punting, and net average of punts. I think Ryan Rico is like somewhere in the high 50s in his gross and something like 48.5 yards net punting average, which is like 10 yards farther than Brad Robbins. I think Brad Robbins literally had like a net 40 or 39 yards per punt last season. Ryan Rico, through 2 games, short sample size, but Ryan Rico has already got like almost 49 yards net average. So, and they keep talking about how, Brad Robbins is still here. He's still on the roster. It's still a competition. It's like, is it really a competition? The guy in his first game, he broke 2 franchise records for longest punt in a game and longest average punting yards for all the punts in the game. And he's looking pretty good in this game. So I don't know why they would even, I guess they have to, they can't say Brad Robbins, you're fired before he's already out the door, but I think the book is pretty much written on Brad Robbins' career as a Bengal so far. But anyway, it was a decent punt by Ryan Rico, 45-yard punt, 2 yards on the return, so decent hang time. That's one of the other things, not just the distance, but Ryan Rico can get more than 5 seconds of hang time on some of his punts. So that's another way to prevent the other team from returning it. But the other way to prevent the other team from doing anything, the first play that the Chiefs had, Patrick Mahomes threw a horrible interception. So very surprising. He threw it right to Akeem Davis-Gaither, who returned it 12 yards to the Kansas City 31. So that was a huge play, probably the biggest play Akeem Davis-Gaither has made in his Bengals career to date. He doesn't get a ton of playing time, and this was kind of surprising just in the personnel that they were using. The Bengals were using kind of more of a traditional 4-3, 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs in the backfield, and they were playing what's commonly referred to as the Tampa 2, cover 2 defense, where you've got your 2 free safeties deep, 2 cornerbacks kind of playing the intermediate outside, and you've got 3 linebackers playing their zones in the middle of the field. And they didn't do anything fancy. Tony Romo even said on the broadcast, he's like, you don't normally see defenses come out, show cover 2, play cover 2. They didn't do anything like tricky. A lot of times team will show one defense and then at the last second switch to another. So for example, if they look like they're running a zone before the snap, then all of a sudden they'll switch to man-to-man defense right when the ball snaps to try to confuse the offense and make them think that they're doing something that they're not. Well, in this play, the Bengals came out, they showed cover 2 zone, they ran cover 2 zone, they didn't do anything to confuse anybody, but somehow Patrick Mahomes just completely misread the defense, threw it right to the Bengals player. I mean, he made a play to jump in front of Travis Kelce, but Mahomes, as Tony Romo is talking him up as being the greatest quarterback of all time, this was a mistake that even somebody in high school or college playing quarterback would look at on tape and say, oh man, I shouldn't have thrown that ball there. So this was a surprising mistake, but a good mistake for the Bengals because they got the ball at the Kansas City 31, prime opportunity to take advantage of the game. Bengals took over 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 31 with 19 seconds left to go in the first quarter. On 1st and 10, Joe Burrow hit rookie tight end Eric All on the left flat for a 9-yard pass. He got tackled, and it looked like it was close to one of those hip drop tackles, but I think in this instance, I didn't see any hip drop flags being called in this game, and that's a new penalty this year. They were close, but it seemed like the defenders are mostly doing a better job of, when they're in a position to make that type of a hip drop tackle, they're able to kind of hold off and bring them down an alternate way. So maybe it's, coaching and probably the risk of getting fined. They don't want to lose money by making an illegal type of tackle, so they're able to basically stop from falling on the back of the player's leg. So I was kind of worried about the way Eric All went down in that, but luckily he popped up, didn't get hip drop tackle. He was fine. And so 2nd and 1, they ran a Joe Burrow sneak up the middle to pick up that 1 yard, pick up the first down. That's one of the differences. The Chiefs, ever since Patrick Mahomes a few years ago, maybe it was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point, he dislocated his kneecap on a similar type of play where it was a short yardage play. Mahomes tried to sneak it up the middle, and while he was doing that, somehow he dislocated his kneecap and he was out for like 3 or 4 weeks. So ever since then, the Chiefs do not run quarterback sneaks with Mahomes. They give it to somebody else. They give it to a running back, somebody who is less valuable than Patrick Mahomes. So Bengals took they take a different philosophy. They're okay with Joe Burrow taking these hits, but this is a couple times. I remember, I think it was in the Patriots game as well. Joe Burrow tried to sneak it up the middle and took a big hit from one of the defenders. So you're putting, it's an effective play. I credit Joe Burrow for having the guts to go up in there and take hits from these guys who outweigh him by 100 pounds. But we don't want to risk Joe Burrow getting injured. So as long as he's able to protect himself, I'm okay with it if he's successful. But that scramble by Joe Burrow was the first play of the second quarter. Then after they picked up that first down, Chase Brown, second-year running back, number 30, he did a hard run up the middle for 7 yards. That's one thing that I've noticed about Chase Brown, especially in comparison last year to somebody like Joe Mixon. Chase Brown, once he hits the hole, puts his foot in the ground, he's much quicker to accelerate and get through the hole and hit it hard. A lot of guys kind of hesitate in the backfield and dance around a little bit too much, but Chase Brown is pretty much the opposite. Once he sees the hole, he's able to break through it relatively quickly. But 2nd and 3, Bengals run another run play up the middle. Zach Moss picks up 5 yards for another first down. They get 1st and goal at the Kansas City 9. Pick up 5 yards on Trenton Irwin's short pass to the right, where he just ran a short hitch route, found an open spot in the zone, sat down, Joe Burrow hit him for 5 yards. 2nd and goal looked like the Chiefs read whatever the Bengals were trying to do on this play. Joe Burrow had to try to improvise, scramble around. Nothing happened. 3rd and goal from the Kansas City 4. They run with Jamar Chase in the slot on the left. Andrei Iosivas split out wide to the left. Joe Burrow, as he normally is, he's in shotgun for all these plays. Takes it out of shotgun, and this must be the type of route that they practice all the time in practice one-on-ones. It's basically a quick out to the far pylon on the left side to Andrei Iosivas, where they're only on the 4-yard line. There's not a lot of room to go anywhere. So he comes up, makes it look like he's running a slant to the inside. Then at the last minute, breaks it to the outside to that pylon toward the corner of the end zone, where that you see the orange camera sticking up. And Joe Burrow, knowing where he's going to be, throws his target right over the top of that pylon. Andrei Iosivas comes in, makes a diving catch, and right as he's going out of bounds, he's able to just drag just enough of both of his tips of his toes to have it count as a catch. Initially, I can't remember if they called it a catch on the field. Yes, they did call it a touchdown on the field, and then it was confirmed by instant replay After this, Andrei Iosivas was obviously all pumped up. He was doing, I don't know what kind of celebration it was. It was like he was shooting the arrow with a bow and arrow. I don't know if it was something about like the Chiefs and whatever, but he was like shooting an arrow at the crowd, kind of like that Joe Burrow touchdown celebration he had last year against the Texans. But that was a cool moment for Andrei. This is his first touchdown catch of the season. And he, for whatever reason, continues to be a big red zone threat with Joe Burrow. He just seems to have that chemistry and knowing where he needs to be. Joe Burrow kind of has a good feel for him down in the red zone. Maybe they, got chemistry practicing that. Andrei's 5th career touchdown comes against the Kansas City Chiefs in a big spot. Bengals go up 10-3 with about 12 minutes left to go in the second quarter. Chiefs took over at their own 30-yard line. 1st and 10, short pass to the right to Xavier Worthy for 5 yards. Pacheco, another run up the middle for 10 yards where he was just busting through tackles. Bengals weren't able to bring him down until he picked up another first down. Chiefs picked up 5 yards and another pass. There was a short pass out to the right to Pacheco that the Bengals were able to stop for a small gain. But on this play was when B.J. Hill, Bengals defensive tackle, hurt his hamstring. We saw him kind of laying on the field. He wasn't able to get up. He was out for the rest of the game after that with a pulled hamstring. And so that's going to have ramifications going forward because he's looking like he's going to be out at least for the next game or two. Bengals, getting ahead of myself, Bengals ended up signing an additional defensive tackle out of free agency today as I'm recording this. So B.J. Hill out of the game. That's a big blow because they already lost DJ Reader from last year, as we know. They brought in Sheldon Rankins. More on him later. But this was when they're already getting gashed on the ground. Losing B.J. Hill at this point in the game was not a good sign. A couple plays later, Patrick Mahomes was able to pick up a first down on 3rd and 4, scrambling. 3rd and 4, he picks up 5 yards before Logan Wilson was able to stop him just after he got the first down. So 1st and 10, Chiefs had the ball at the Bengals' 44-yard line. And out of the shotgun, on the left side, Rashee Rice is lined up at wide receiver, one-on-one with Cam Taylor-Britt. And coincidentally, CBS, right before this, had been going through the comments that Cam Taylor-Britt had made previously in the week about how Xavier Worthy, the Chiefs wide receiver, was just a fast guy in straight lines. And they basically put all the comments that Cam Taylor-Britt had made back out there. And then, so on this play, Mahomes goes back, looks to his left. He sees Rashee Rice streaking. He's got 2 steps on Cam Taylor-Britt. Mahomes throws a deep, accurate pass, hits Rashee Rice right in stride for a 44-yard touchdown, easy for me to say, right over the leaping arms of Cam Taylor-Britt, who's too far behind, not able to catch up and get a piece of the ball before it goes into Rashee Rice's waiting arms in the end zone, and he does some kind of dance. And so they were zooming in on Cam Taylor-Britt after this, obviously, when he was walking off the field and saying like, oh, he was just talking all that stuff, and then they got a touchdown scored on him. So that wasn't a good moment. He would redeem himself with a big play later in the game. But this is kind of one of the things where talking can come back to bite you, because you put a bullseye on your back when you make a lot of comments like that, and then it just so happened that CBS was calling you out for your comments, and they score a 44-yard touchdown on you. And after the game, Cam Taylor-Britt said that on this play, he thought it was a run, so he stopped running as fast, and that's why Rashee Rice ran right past him. And so he's like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be a pass, but then Patrick Mahomes can throw it 70 yards in the air, and all of a sudden it's a touchdown. Well, this is a 44-yard touchdown, so obviously he didn't throw it 70 yards in the air. It was more like 50 yards in the air, but it was kind of a low pass, on a line. He didn't put a ton of air underneath it. It was definitely a bullet pass for a 50-yard in the air pass. But that's one of the things that when the Bengals are going up against their own team in practice, the Bengals defense is going up against Joe Burrow and Jake Browning, neither one of whom can throw it like Patrick Mahomes. There's no way to simulate a Patrick Mahomes throw from any of the Bengals quarterbacks. So Bengals defense isn't used to seeing throws like this, I guess. Like it just doesn't register in their mind that a quarterback is able to make a throw like that because they don't see it in practice. But Mahomes can, and when the Chiefs are on your own side of the 50-yard line, you always have to be prepared for a touchdown pass at any moment. After the Chiefs made the extra point, that made it tie game 10-10 with about 9 minutes left to go in the second quarter. Back and forth game. They traded field goals. Now both teams traded touchdowns. It was really exciting. You didn't know which way it was going to go at this point. But when the Bengals got the ball back, things started off promising for this drive. They picked up a couple first downs on a nice pass to Drew Sample for 8 yards. Zach Moss picked up short yardage, 2nd and 2. He picked up a first down for 3 yards. There was a 19-yard pass to Eric All on the left from Joe Burrow. 12-yard pass to Jamar Chase. Got another first down to the Kansas City 28-yard line. Bengals, that's when they started to get slowed up a little bit. Like these defenses for both teams, kind of a bend but don't break style. They're not going to give up, well, except for the Bengals just gave up a 44-yard touchdown. I was about to say they don't give up big plays, big explosive plays, but they like to keep everything in front of them, don't give up big explosive plays. And then once they get down toward the red zone, that's when they really start to stiffen up on the defense and try to hold them from scoring touchdowns and keep them to field goals. And that's what eventually the Chiefs were able to do in this drive. There was an incomplete pass to Jamar Chase down the left sideline, but it was a defensive pass interference penalty on Trent McDuffie. It looked like on the replay, it looked almost like Jamar Chase was the one who was dragging down the Chiefs defender with him, but there was a little bit of contact while the ball was in the air from both and could have gone either way. Luckily for the Bengals, it went in their favor on this. But that's one thing to remember, just kind of put in the memory banks, is it's not like every call was going against the Bengals in this game. They did get this defensive pass interference penalty, and Jamar Chase, with Trent McDuffie guarding him, did get a penalty. So we'll talk about that later. But keep in mind, it's not like everything went against the Bengals. No, the fix wasn't in or whatever. But that was they picked up 14 yards because of that penalty. So the Bengals had it 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 12-yard line with about 5 minutes left to go in the second quarter. Joe Burrow, 1st and 10, rolls out to the left, or he doesn't roll it, but he stays in the pocket, throws a pass to Mike Gesicki on the left, who just drops the pass. It was a good pass by Joe Burrow, hits Gesicki in the hands. For whatever reason, he dropped it. Then the next play, Joe Burrow is rolling out to his right, and he had a lot of room in front of him. There wasn't anybody coming up to tackle him. It looked like he almost, if he would have run the ball, he may have been able to score a touchdown himself on this play. But instead of running, he decided to throw the ball to his wide receiver in the end zone, Trenton Irwin, who had a little bit of separation, but there was a defender near him. But it was a good enough pass from Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow made a nice on-the-run pass, and it literally hit Trenton Irwin in the face. He kind of like slid down to the ground while he was putting his arms out, and the ball came in and just hit him right in the face mask. He didn't catch the ball. Ball hit the ground. No touchdown. But that was just kind of a gut punch because you're thinking, okay, well, it looks good here. We're in position. Joe Burrow could either run it in or he could throw it. Okay, he's going to throw it and off Trenton Irwin's face. So 3rd and 10, this is where, okay, we got to get something going here. We got good field position on the Kansas City 12. And then Joe Burrow takes a sack. Backing up one play. Actually, a couple of plays ago, that Gesicki pass, not that it matters, but the Gesicki, they were trying to hit Mike Gesicki on a back shoulder fade ball. Joe Burrow was throwing a lot of deeper passes to the left. Maybe that's easier for him to throw, but they didn't end up connecting on this one. But on the 3rd and 10, the pocket just kind of collapsed on Joe Burrow. The offensive line wasn't able to protect long enough. Joe Burrow wasn't able to escape the sack, so lost 3 yards. Bengals had to settle for a field goal take back the lead, go up 13-10 with about 4 minutes left to go in the second quarter. So at this point, the first half is starting to wind down. Chiefs are going to get the ball to start the second half. So I'm sure the Chiefs at this point were thinking they were going to try to hold on to the ball and score with the last possession of the second half and then come out and get the ball again. Like Zach Taylor has always feared, they will get the dreaded momentum. But on this drive, the momentum actually, no, we won't say momentum, but good things happened for the Bengals on this drive. Wasn't looking great to start off with. Chiefs picked up first downs by 2 Pacheco runs, one for 8 yards, one for 4 yards. Then on 1st and 10, incomplete pass from Mahomes. Broken up by Cam Taylor-Britt, but it was a pass to the left to Rashee Rice. It looked like Cam Taylor-Britt got there early. Probably a lot of Bengals fans will disagree, but it looked on camera like Cam Taylor-Britt was coming over the back early, and they said on the CBS broadcast that it looked like pass interference on Cam Taylor-Britt, and the CBS analyst Gene Steratore, or not announcing, but the officiating analyst Gene Steratore came in with his 2 cents, and he said it looked like pass interference on Cam Taylor-Britt also, but it didn't get called, so ended up being 2nd and 10 for the Chiefs. After that, the next play, Carson Steele, rookie running back, takes it up the middle, gets 3 yards, and then Jermaine Pratt strips the ball out, causes the fumble. It's recovered by Jermaine Pratt at the Kansas City 46-yard line. So kind of a big play right there. Maybe what you call a rookie mistake, not holding onto the ball in a big pile like that. The Chiefs didn't take Carson Steele out of the game after this, but he didn't get as many snaps. But that was a big play. Bengals got the ball back. Bengals had 1st and 10 from the Kansas City 46 with 3 minutes left to go in the second quarter. First play, Joe Burrow throws a pass to Eric All, the tight end, who is promptly blown up and driven into the ground by Chiefs linebacker Nick Bolton for a 1-yard loss. But the next play, Joe Burrow hits Mike Gesicki over the right middle for 12 yards and another first down. 1st and 10, Chase Brown up the middle for 6 yards. Then on 2nd and 4, Joe Burrow tried a deep pass to Jermaine Burton up the left sidelines. I think this is the first target that rookie third-round pick Jermaine Burton saw in the game. And on the one hand, I mean, they didn't complete it, so the ball looked like it landed out of bounds. But the thing that was kind of, I guess, concerning about this to me was this ball was fluttering in the air a lot. Let's see, they threw it from the Kansas City 29-yard line, 29-yard line, so a 30-yard pass. But Joe Burrow, like, it was a duck. Like, it was fluttering, wobbling in the air, not a tight spiral that you would expect to see from an NFL quarterback for sure. Like, you don't usually see a lot of ducks out of NFL quarterbacks like this. So that was kind of one of the things that they had talked about in preseason training camp. Joe Burrow was talking about how he's coming back from wrist surgery, and he felt like he had the power, the velocity, the timing, the accuracy. He said he was able to put the ball where he wanted to when it needed to be there, but it just wasn't spinning quite the way that he wanted it to. And that was kind of evident on this pass. Like, it was good location, good timing, everything like that. And it's not a big deal that the ball's wobbling, but when the ball's not a spiral, it makes it that much harder to catch. If the point of the ball is fluttering all around, it's more random about how it's going to hit the receiver in the hands, and that much harder for the receiver to catch a pass. Whereas if it's coming in with a tight spiral, you can basically just put your hands out around the tip of the ball and catch, the sides of the ball as opposed to just catching whatever. So that was a little bit weird. And on Joe Burrow, he did throw some deeper passes in this game, but when he did throw deep, it was like he had to collect himself, really get his body in a good throwing position and prepared to throw it deep. Like, he's not like one of these quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson for the Colts is a prime example, who's going to be able to just fling it 60 yards off balance, just all arm strength. Like, Joe Burrow has to get a perfect base, perfect footwork. Everything has to be in the right situation for Joe Burrow to even throw it more than 50 yards, it seems like at this point. Like, 55 might be Joe Burrow's maximum range. So ended up going incomplete on the pass, but at least they threw an attempt that went more than 20 yards. Like in the Patriots game, it seemed like they didn't even try any passes. So we already saw in this game they got a defensive pass interference that helped on a deep pass. So at least giving the receivers a chance to make a play or pick up a defensive pass interference penalty. As long as Joe Burrow doesn't throw an interception, most of these passes have worked out. But speaking of pass interference penalties, the next play on 3rd and 4, Bengals tried to throw a pass to Mike Gesicki, but they ended up picking an offensive pass interference penalty on Trenton Irwin. Basically, the Bengals were trying to run a pick route or rub route, whatever you want to call it, where Trenton Irwin kind of pretends like he's running a route, but actually his primary objective is just to get in the way of the defender who's guarding his teammate, Mike Gesicki. But he didn't do a very good acting job on this one. He just basically ran straight into the guy and tried to make it look like it was an accident. But referees saw right through his ruse. The Chiefs ended up accepting this 10-yard penalty to move the Bengals back from the 29 to the 39. Bengals picked up 9 of it on another pass to Mike Gesicki, but that was on 3rd and 14, so they didn't pick up a first down. They ended up having to settle for another Evan McPherson 48-yard field goal, which was good. That made the score 16-10 Bengals with about a minute and a half left to go in the first half. Chiefs didn't end up doing too much on their last drive of this first half. They picked up 1 first down, but then Trey Hendrickson got a big sack for 10 yards when it was 2nd and 9, came off the left edge, beat the rookie left tackle, and put the Chiefs into 3rd and 19. Patrick Mahomes scrambled out to the left for 8 yards, but wasn't able to pick up a first down. Chiefs ended up having to punt. One of the interesting things, when a player scrambles like this and they run out of bounds, whoever is the closest defender to them when they run out of bounds gets credit for the tackle. So in this instance, Patrick Mahomes was scrambling around, ran out of bounds before anybody could touch him. Cam Taylor-Britt was the closest player to Mahomes when he went out of bounds, so he got credit for the tackle. That was Cam Taylor-Britt's only recorded tackle of the game, and he didn't even touch him. So Cam Taylor-Britt made a big play later in the game, but he played the entire game on defense, and his only tackle basically was where he didn't even touch anybody. So he's making we'll get to the good play he had. Obviously, he gave up a touchdown, and I want to see him more physical. I mean, you don't want your cornerbacks making tackles too much. Like Jermaine Pratt, Jermaine Pratt led the team in tackles. Logan Wilson was second. They had a bunch of tackles. The safeties had a bunch of tackles. But I don't know, basically, for Cam Taylor-Britt not to have any tackles, I don't know what he was doing in the running game because the Chiefs needed to be tackled on some of these plays, but he wasn't doing any of it. But anyway, the Chiefs ended up punting the ball away, and there was only like 20 seconds left anyway, so Chiefs punted the ball away from their own 50-yard line. Matt Araiza, the punt god, as he's commonly referred to, he was the one out of San Diego State everybody was talking about where he was hitting like 80, 85-yard punts coming out of college. So we've got Ryan Rico, the Bengals punter, who's hitting 80-yarders, and then Matt Araiza, whatever. He is also one of the other top punters in the league. So this is an epic punter duel between these two teams. And this one was it bounced inside the 5, and then the Chiefs player ended up like doing a perfect leap into the end zone without touching down in the end zone to throw the ball back out to the 1-yard line where the Chiefs downed it and nobody went into the end zone. 95% of the time, at least, I'd say on that type of a play, you see the covering player will run down there, touch the ball, and then just run into the end zone, and it'll be a touchback. For most of these guys, they don't have the body control or the awareness to keep it out of the end zone and not go into the end zone themselves. But on this play, the Chiefs were able to do it. That just put a little bit of extra pressure on the Bengals they were backed up against their own 1 yard line basically, but they were able to just run a short Joe Burrow scramble up the middle for 0 yards just to get to halftime, run out the clock. Bengals got in with the lead 16-10. So we go into halftime, 16-10, Bengals on top. Let's do a little bit of a mental reset. Going into this game, Chiefs, I think by the time the game started, Chiefs were 6.5 point favorites. So instead of being behind, Bengals are leading by 6. So my personal expectation, like I said, I just wanted to have a close, entertaining game going into this. So I wasn't expecting the Bengals to be leading the game at halftime. I mean, the Bengals never led the game against the Patriots at all. So it was like the fact that the Bengals just had a lead for a moment in the game seemed good. And they played a mostly clean first half compared to the Chiefs. Not a lot of mental errors or mistakes like the Chiefs have been making. Like the Chiefs were in their typical self-destruction mode, just throwing interceptions, fumbling the ball at critical moments. And the Bengals, even though they only scored 1 touchdown, they had 3 field goals, 1 punt. Zach Taylor, after halftime, he came out and said, we're doing a good job. We just have to convert more of those drives into touchdowns, not just settle for field goals. But I thought Zach Taylor, especially on that first drive, was especially aggressive, like going for it on that fourth down when they got the long pass to Gesicki that almost ended up in a touchdown, but they had to settle for that field goal. But still, they were playing aggressively against a top opponent. This is the team that has won the Super Bowl 3 out of the last 4 years. So, like they say, if you want to be the best, you have to beat the best, and you can't, come in playing timidly. So I appreciated the aggressiveness from the coaching staff. But I still had that nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I've seen this so many times before in all of these Super Bowl runs that the Chiefs have had recently, where they've been behind and they still found some way to miraculously bring back a win at the end. So I wasn't getting my hopes up. I was like, okay, they've got the lead. They haven't made any kind of horrible mistakes yet, but still a long way to go. The Chiefs opened up the second half, received the kickoff, and ended up with a 13-play, 70-yard drive all the way down the field for a touchdown. And it was mostly a lot of running. It was a lot of Pacheco on this drive. Just runs up the middle, 10 yards, 5 yards, 9 yards. They even ran a direct snap on 3rd and 1 to Isaiah Pacheco because, as I mentioned before, they don't do like the tush push up the middle like the Eagles do with Patrick Mahomes. They don't want to risk the injury, so they tried direct snap. Bengals were able to stop that with Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. Both of them stopped Pacheco straight over the middle, brought up 4th and 1 on the drive at the Cincinnati 37. They did like a kind of a pistol formation and gave it to the rookie running back Steele, who had fumbled previously right before halftime. They gave it to him again on 4th and 1, and he picked up 5 yards for the first down. So they were like, good for him. Even though he fumbled and gave it back to the Bengals, he picked up the first down. So the Chiefs kept driving it all the way down the field. More runs from Pacheco, passes to Pacheco. It was a lot of Pacheco and Steele on this drive. They got it down to the Cincinnati 1-yard line on 2nd and goal, and they had an extra offensive lineman, actually 2 extra offensive linemen come into the game, so like a jumbo personnel, and Patrick Mahomes ended up throwing it to one of these backup offensive linemen, number 64. So it was like a big guy touchdown. Chiefs kick the extra point, go up 17-16. One other important note was on 1st and goal on that drive, Sheldon Rankins, number 98 for the Bengals, their defensive tackle, he also injured his hamstring on this play. So They had B.J. Hill earlier in the game injure his hamstring. So at this point, both of their starting defensive tackles are out of the game with injured hamstrings. Jay Tufele, Zach Carter, and I don't even know who else was playing inside after that. We'll have to take a look at the snap counts later. But this was not a good sign because they're already getting run on by Pacheco up the middle, and now both the defensive tackles on the Bengals interior are out of the game. But Bengals offense had a great response for the Chiefs touchdown. Came back with a touchdown drive of their own, which got started on the first play with a play action out of shotgun. Play action, Burrow faked it to Zach Moss, and they had Jermaine Burton lined up, split out wide to the left. He went deep. Joe Burrow hit him with a much less wobbly, pretty almost tight spiral up the left sideline, picked up 47 yards. It was over 50 yards in the air from Joe Burrow. So definitely showed off that he's got, enough arm. Like people always talking about Tom Brady never had the strongest arm or whatever. Yeah, it's effective. He gets enough on it to get it to Jermaine Burton for a 57-yard pickup. Then they had it on 1st and 10, but interestingly, on 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 23, they fumbled the snap exchange between Joe Burrow and Ted Karras, the center. That was a little bit out of the ordinary because over 95% of the plays that the Bengals run is coming out of the shotgun formation where Burrow doesn't even go up under center to take the snap. So it was just a little bit weird that on the one unusual play where Burrow actually goes up under center, he fumbles the snap, it goes on the ground. Luckily, Joe Burrow is able to fall on it and retain possession for the Bengals. But Bengals recover. Joe Burrow completes a pass out to Mike Gesicki on the left sideline. Gesicki makes a nice move to avoid a tackle, picks up about 8 yards. Then on 3rd and 2, and Joe Burrow goes back to pass, but the pocket collapses on him again. This time he's able to escape out of the pocket, step up, avoid the sack this time, and he's able to pick up the extra yards with the assistance of Ted Karras, the center, coming over, pushing the pile with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow gets up after getting the first down, pounding his chest, pointing his finger forward for the first down. Has this like Chris Webber, if you remember Chris Webber from the NBA, when he used to have that snarl on his, like just that mean expression on his face, and the fans were booing, and Joe Burrow was loving it even more. So that was a classic Joe Burrow moment right there. That sets up 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 11. Zach Moss gets a couple runs for 9 yards. They get 3rd and 1, and Cody Ford is reporting in during these short yardage situations down near the goal line. The extra lineman, Cody Ford, is coming in to be a 6th offensive lineman. Just get a little bit more size out there to block these guys. So he comes in, and they do another Joe Burrow sneak up the middle to pick up the first down. And again, Joe Burrow doesn't get injured. But I'm always holding my breath just because he's so fragile, it seems like. But I got to just accept the risk that Joe Burrow can pick up these first downs. If he's good at it, he can get the first down. I feel pretty safe having him with the ball in his hands in those situations because he usually does a good job of picking the right gap to just kind of fall forward into. I remember like the Joe Burrow childhood highlights. He always talks about his first touchdown he ever scored was he was playing quarterback and he saw that nobody was guarding immediately over the center, so he just took the snap and ran it straight ahead and nobody touched him. He just ran past everybody for the touchdown. So if Joe Burrow sees an opportunity like that, he's going to take it. So Bengals even though Joe Burrow doesn't score the touchdown, he does pick up a first down. So the Bengals have 1st and goal inside the 1-yard line. So it's looking good. But the first 3 plays, the Bengals actually lose 2 yards. They had 2 incomplete passes where Joe Burrow was just kind of scrambling around, couldn't find anybody open, and just kind of threw the ball away. Luckily, he didn't take a sack on any of those plays. And then there was another run mixed in there with Zach Moss, run around the right end. He wasn't able to find any daylight to squirt up inside to try to score, so he actually lost 2 yards. So it brought up 4th and goal from the Kansas City 3-yard line. Joe Burrow takes the pass out of shotgun, looking around, looks to his left, throws to his left. All of a sudden, you see the camera pan. Who's there but number 80, Andrei Iosivas, wide open for his second touchdown of the game. Jim Nantz was in disbelief. Look who it is. In the biggest game of the year, Princeton star Andrei Iosivas. And for the most part, they pronounced his name correctly. And so that's having a big knock-on effect in the rest of Bengals media and the Bengals landscape of learning how to actually pronounce this guy's name correctly. More and more people are catching on. They were really fighting it to not say his name properly, but it is Andrei Iosivas, as we all know. But this was interesting because before the touchdown, the Bengals were down by 1 point. It was 17-16 Chiefs. They got the touchdown. That puts them up by 5, 22-17. So they had the decision to either kick the extra point to go up by 6 or go for 2-point conversion, go up by 7. Bengals opt to go for the safer pick and kick the extra point. But extra point, since it was moved back to be a 38-yard attempt a few years ago, and now it's not just a gimme kick anymore. And on this extra point attempt for the Bengals, you can see on the TV replay, the snap is a little bit off target from Cal Adamitis. Normally, on the extra point, you want to snap the ball directly at the long snapper, pretty much, so he doesn't have to move, or as long as he doesn't have to move his hands really from where he's going to be spotting the ball on the ground. In this snap, you could see that the long snapper had to reach his body or reach his hands out away from his body. The snap was a little bit, outside, you could say. So he had to reach out. That kind of threw off the timing of Evan McPherson, the kicker, a little bit. The kick went wide to the right, missed it. So now the Bengals only have a 5-point lead instead of 6 or 7. And there's about 2.5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. Chiefs get the ball back at their own 30, down by 5. They run a couple plays, and then looks like the Bengals make a huge play. Patrick Mahomes goes back for a pass, tries to throw it to Juwan Johnson, and it's another one of Mahomes is throwing these like 3/4 sidearm, really low passes. He's not putting a lot of air under a lot of the passes that he is throwing deep. They're kind of these like low bullet passes. I don't know if it was windy in Kansas City that day. I know it was hot there. I don't know if I mentioned that, but at kickoff, it was like 87 degrees in Kansas City. So this was a warm game, and going into this fourth quarter and the second half, a lot of these guys are getting more and more tired. It's hot out there. You're not necessarily in the top shape you could be in at this point in the season. And so they mentioned like guys were getting IVs, getting dehydrated out there. But Mahomes, he throws his pass. It gets intercepted by DJ Turner, number 20. He's not normally a starter for the Bengals. He's coming off the bench. So I think maybe they were in a nickel or dime with more defensive backs on the field. I don't think anybody got injured at that point. DJ Turner's out there, breaks in front of the pass, picks it off. Big play for the Bengals. Everybody's celebrating. But there's a flag on the play. They said that rookie defensive safety, number 33, Dejon Anthony, gets illegal contact on Travis Kelce away from the play somewhere. It's a 5-yard penalty, negates the interception by the Bengals, and gives the Chiefs an automatic first down. On the first play after the Bengals penalty, the Chiefs pick up a penalty of their own. The rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamataia, picks up a comical holding penalty on Trey Hendrickson. He's like, almost has him in a chokehold with the one arm around Trey Hendrickson's head as he's trying to come in on the pass rush. So that wipes up a 8-yard gain that they had to Pacheco out of the backfield. After a 7-yard pass on 1st and 20 for the Chiefs, Mahomes makes another uncharacteristically bad throw, bad decision. He tries to go up the left sideline to Xavier Worthy, but it's another underthrown pass. But also, Cam Taylor-Britt has better position on the receiver than he did in the first half with Rashee Rice. So in this one, this is Xavier Worthy. He's the record holder for fastest 40-yard dash at the combine. So Cam Taylor-Britt, he can't stop running like he did on the first one. He knows he's got to run, so he takes off running immediately on this deep route by Xavier Worthy, gets in good position, and he does a good job of forcing him to the outside and not letting the receiver get stacked over top of him and be able to outrun him to the ball. But also on this play, Patrick Mahomes leaves the ball kind of short and inside instead of letting it go out deep. Maybe he was trying to keep it, out of reach from a safety coming over from the middle of the field, but for whatever reason, he left it inside. That let Cam Taylor-Britt jump up and make a one-handed diving interception that he just all in one motion kind of looked back, saw the ball coming, reached his hand up, grabbed it, and as he's falling to the ground, pulled the ball into his body to complete the catch, and it was an interception and didn't let Xavier Worthy get a hand on it to break it up from him. So great play by Cam Taylor-Britt, huge moment in the game, and that's going to be a big highlight, for years to come. I'm sure he's going to have that like a poster in his house somewhere of that moment, because he could always say he had like a one-handed interception on Patrick Mahomes in one of the biggest games of the season. They on CBS, Jim Nantz, they were trying to compare it to the Odell Beckham Jr. catch for the Giants, but I feel like they kind of overused that comparison a lot. Like this, it was like every time somebody makes a one-handed catch, they try to compare it to Odell Beckham Jr., but it wasn't really the same situation, and they showed that original catch like back-to-back with this Cam Taylor-Britt catch, and it just made it more obvious and apparent that they weren't really that similar. I mean, it was a good catch, but you see defensive backs make one-handed catches pretty regularly like that. So I think it was impressive because he did it all in like one kind of fluid motion, and so it looked like totally natural, but it didn't completely make up for the touchdown they gave up on the similar play in the first half, but brought the Bengals back into a much more favorable position, obviously. But after Bengals took over on 1st and 10, 2 incomplete passes, a couple drops, and then Joe Burrow got sacked, and while he was getting sacked, fumbled the ball, and it got recovered by the Chiefs and ran all the way back for a touchdown. So worst case scenario in that situation, Bengals have it on their own territory at the 34, but they have the lead at that point. In the fourth quarter, they're up by 5, and all of a sudden Joe Burrow gets sacked, stripped, fumbles. All of a sudden they've lost the lead. Now Chiefs are leading 23-22, and Joe Burrow walks off the field, a look of disgust, shaking his head, and they kind of said, well, he wasn't arguing, because it was kind of a question of whether it was a fumble or not. On the replay, they had to go and check, obviously, as they do for every turnover, to see if it really was a fumble. But Joe Burrow wasn't really saying, no, I didn't fumble, so it didn't seem like he was arguing it too much. But Chiefs, since they were ahead by 1 and the fourth quarter just started, they decided to go for the 2-point conversion. So previously, the Bengals decided to kick instead of going for 2. This time, Chiefs make the opposite decision. They decide to go for it instead of kicking the field goal. Bengals do a good job on this play. Dax Hill breaks up the pass that was intended for Xavier Worthy, the Chiefs wide receiver, at the back of the end zone. That keeps it at a 1-point lead for the Chiefs instead of getting to a 3-point lead. Silver lining in that they prevented the Chiefs from picking up the 2-point conversion. But Bengals offense responds with another scoring drive. They come back, receive the kickoff. They pick up a nice Chase Brown 6-yard run and a screen pass to Zach Moss out of the backfield that picked up 13, where he ducked under. I think it was George Karlaftis, one of the Chiefs linebackers. He just ducked under the tackle, picked up a first down. They had another Zach Moss short run. Finally got Jamar Chase involved. He had a really quiet day up until this point, but he got a 13-yard catch for another first down. But then on that first down from the Kansas City 33, Joe Burrow, I don't know if the play got busted because it looked like the Bengals were trying to set up a screen pass, but maybe the Chiefs read it. The Chiefs were all over all the screen passes that the Bengals tried to run. So there was one earlier in the previous drive where Joe Burrow just kind of had to spike the ball in the ground because Chiefs knew basically exactly what play the Bengals offense was trying to run. This was, I think, another one of those situations where Orlando Brown thought it was going to be a screen, so he took the guy that was coming in and basically just grabbed him and threw him on the ground because he, I think, thought that the ball was already thrown or something, but obviously you can't do that. That was a holding penalty that moved the Bengals back an additional 10 yards. They picked up a 9-yard gain from Mike Gesicki on the left where he caught it and he did a front flip somersault where I'm glad he's got like the athletic body control to roll and tuck his head underneath. I thought he was going to land like on the top of his crown of his head and like paralyze himself. So it was good that Mike Gesicki popped up after that catch and a good gain. Now this next play was 2nd and 11, about 10 minutes and 43 seconds left to go in the fourth quarter. Burrow throws a pass short to the right to Ja'Marr Chase, who's wrapped up and tackled almost immediately by Trent McDuffie in the open field. Trent McDuffie has been shadowing Ja'Marr Chase one-on-one the entire game. He brings him down, and as Ja'Marr Chase is getting up, he's motioning for a flag to come out. He thinks it's a penalty. When I was watching the game live, I thought, because I couldn't see from the angle, I thought maybe he had got face mask, but when they showed the replay, there wasn't any face mask. So then it was like, well, maybe he thought he got horse collar tackled, or apparently after the game, he thought it was a hip drop tackle on him. It was kind of an awkward tackle, but I don't think by definition it was illegal. It was just kind of a unusual angle to get tackled at, but there was nothing illegal or unnecessary about it to warrant a penalty. But Ja'Marr Chase got up and he didn't get a penalty from the referee, so he started yelling at the referee, hey, there should be a penalty. You obviously can't hear what he was saying, but he was motioning and obviously saying something to the ref about it should be a penalty. Didn't get a flag, nothing came of it, and then he kept going back at the referee saying more stuff. Joe Burrow at this point sees what's going on. He comes running over, gets in between Ja'Marr and the ref, and starts holding him back. But at that point, I don't know what Ja'Marr said, but the penalty flag comes out of the ref. It's unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on the Bengals, on Ja'Marr Chase at that point. So this situation where they're trying to drive down and possibly score a touchdown because they're in Kansas City territory at the Kansas City 34-yard line, and it was going to be, after the 4-yard gain, it would be 3rd and 7. But after the penalty, that moved them back to 3rd and 22. So it was a huge, critical penalty. You could see Ja'Marr Chase tell Joe Burrow he was sorry, but it seemed like in that moment he was determined that he wasn't going to stop talking to the referee until he got a penalty just to prove a point. For whatever reason, I don't know why he felt like he needed to prove a point. You could speculate that because he didn't get a long-term contract extension, he's going to be super sensitive, and whenever somebody tries to tackle him in a way that he feels like he could get injured, that's exactly why in the last episode we mentioned he apparently took out a $50 million insurance policy on himself against injury, exactly this type of injury. So he's obviously very concerned about the potential of getting injured, and he reacted, obviously overreacted. He's going to get fined, no doubt, for this outburst in a big moment, being very disrespectful, which I like that. I like the emotion. I like the intensity from Ja'Marr Chase. That's why he's such an amazing competitor, but you have to know when to, hold back and not just lose your mind, totally blow a gasket and cost the rest of your team 15 yards in a big spot like this. But the Bengals throw another 10-yard pass to the right to Mike Gesicki. He's having a big game. He's picking up, except for when he's dropping passes, he's picking up lots of yards in this game. and the Bengals get back enough yards to set up a 53-yard field goal for Evan McPherson. This time, snap is good, the hold is good, the kick is good. Bengals retake the lead 25-23 with 9.5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Chiefs take over with their 1st and 10, short gain up the middle with Pacheco. Then 2nd and 6, Mahomes gets sacked violently by Trey Hendrickson coming off the left, and he's beaten up on this rookie left tackle at this point in the game, and he's not able to get enough help blocking from the running back Isaiah Pacheco. Trey Hendrickson comes right around, does like a two-hand tomahawk chop onto Patrick Mahomes, gets the sack, doesn't get the strip, but then on the next play, the Chiefs actually pick up a big explosive play over the middle. They complete a pass, it looks like, to Travis Kelce, where he breaks the tackle of Dejon Anthony, runs, it looks like he fakes like he's going to throw the ball again, but keeps it for a 41-yard gain. But there's a penalty in the backfield on the play. This rookie left tackle, again, this time does another holding on Trey Hendrickson that brings back this long gain. Unfortunately for the Bengals, Sheldon Rankins, who at this point had come back into the game from being injured, now he was injured again, so he came back out of the game for a second time. I think this was the final time that he came back out of the game. But that set the Chiefs back to a 3rd and 20. They picked up 10 yards, but they eventually had to punt it back to the Bengals. So this was a great 3-and-out stop for the Bengals defense, maintaining the lead in the middle of the fourth quarter and giving the ball back to the offense. The Chiefs punter hits a bomb of a 63-yard punt. Charlie Jones has to go back and field it at the Cincinnati 7. Again, questionable decision whether you want to field the punt inside your own 10-yard line, but he brings it out for 9 yards to the 16. Bengals take over 1st and 10 of their own 16. They get a 5-yard pass to Eric All. He picks up some tough yards. Zach Moss on a short 1-yard run. Mike Gesicki picked up a first down. Questionable spot by the referee. He didn't really have a great angle, but he just gave him the first down. Probably would have been reviewable, but they just kept going on with the game. Didn't say anything. Chase Brown picked up 12 yards on 1st and 10. He, again, showing off explosiveness. When he sees that crease up the middle, he can take advantage of that. So the Bengals keep driving it out of their own territory. Cody Ford keeps coming in, checking in as that 6th lineman. That's, I can't remember, over 10 times that they use Cody Ford. We'll have to go back and check the snap counts, but they've been using Cody Ford as a 6th offensive lineman along with these multiple tight end sets in this game, and they're continuing to utilize the tight ends all the way down the field. There was another pass where Andrei Iosivas was wide open across the middle of the field, but the ball was a little bit behind Andrei. He kind of tipped it behind him. He got one hand on it behind him, but he luckily didn't get intercepted by one of the Chiefs. That ball easily could have been intercepted if there was somebody in the wrong position on defense. But another one of those things, it was hard to tell whether Andrei should have maybe slowed down on his route a little bit to make it easier for Joe Burrow to throw to him, because it's hard to hit, obviously like a moving target that's going sideways. Make it easier. If you're wide open, you can kind of slow it down a little bit, make it easier for the quarterback to just put it on you. But a little bit of a miscommunication or a misfire from Joe Burrow. And next play, Joe Burrow gets sacked. This was just a good call by the Chiefs defense. It came with a late blitz, maybe a miscommunication by the Bengals offensive line and Drew Sample coming over to block. He doesn't see the safety coming down late. He gets through and forces the Bengals to punt on 4th down after taking Joe Burrow down for that 9-yard sack on 3rd and 6. So after that drive, the Bengals took 4.5 minutes off the clock. They ran 7 plays for 17 yards, took a little bit of time off the clock, but now they're punting it back to the Chiefs, who take over at their own 25, down by 2 points with 2.5 minutes left to go in the game. Chiefs get 1 first down, but then on 1st and 10, after the 2-minute warning, first play out of the 2-minute warning, they give it to running back Pacheco up the middle. He gets 1 yard. He gets stopped by Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, But then while he's getting tackled, he gets bent over backwards very awkwardly. And it looked like somebody was like had their body on his leg. And so he got bent backwards on his leg. He was out of the game after this play. And then it came out, I think, Monday that he has a fractured fibula in his lower leg. He's going to be out a number of games. I think he's going to be out maybe 6 or 8 weeks. So he could be back for the playoffs, but that's going to be a big loss because he played such a key role for the Chiefs all the way through this game. Then at the 2-minute mark, basically, he goes out of the game and he's going to be gone for at least a couple months. But it was also at this point in this drive, they were pointing out that the Chiefs had benched their rookie left tackle, Kingsley Suamatea, for the guy who scored the touchdown, number 64, Wanya Morris. So he came in to play left tackle instead of the rookie because the rookie was given up, he had given up 2 sacks, a couple holding penalties. He was having a rough day of it out there. But the replacement, he came in and also got an illegal use of hands to the face, 10-yard penalty, because Trey Hendrickson is a menace out there. It doesn't matter who you put in front of Trey Hendrickson, they're going to have a tough time with it. The thing that was interesting about this kind of sequence of events was replacing Pacheco in the backfield was former Bengal Samaje Perine. A lot of people had anticipated maybe he was going to come back and play for the Bengals, but now they got Samaje Perine in there taking snaps. And it was an interesting decision because the Bengals, they got this penalty on 4th and 6. So it was 4th and 6. Bengals were playing kind of a deep zone, I guess, just to make sure nothing got behind them. But Rashee Rice was able to find a spot in the zone. They picked up 21 yards, but it was negated by the penalty on the play. That brings up 4th and 16 from the Kansas City 35-yard line with 48 seconds left to go in the game. Mahomes drops back to pass, scrambles around a little bit, throws this awkward across his body. He's scrambling from his, right to left. So he's scrambling basically to the left, away from his right-handed side. He throws across his body over the middle. Not what you really want to do. It's incomplete, and the camera's kind of panning over it quickly, so you can't really see what happened. Immediately, it looked like just kind of a bang-bang play. But then, referee from the sideline throws the penalty flag. It's pass interference. You can see on the replay, Dejon Anthony, the rookie, number 33, comes over the back about half a second early before the ball gets there. Clearly pass interference. Easy call for the referee. And so that's the second big penalty by Dejon Anthony. The first penalty he had wiped out an interception from DJ Turner. Now this penalty on 4th and 16. That was a huge play in the game. The Chiefs were going to have to give the ball back over to the Bengals. If that would have been incomplete, Bengals surely would have been able to run the clock out and win the game. So critical moment in the game. Chiefs are able to get a first down. And that was a huge swing in field position. It moved it basically 30 yards down the field. It went from the Kansas City 35 to the Cincinnati 36. 29-yard penalty on 4th and 16. And the Chiefs, 1st and 10, incomplete pass. They picked up 2 yards on the next 2 plays. So that put it at the Cincinnati 32, setting up a Harrison Butker 51-yard field goal to make it 26-23. Chiefs win the game as time expires. Obviously, Bengals are all heartbroken. I'm mostly heartbroken, but honestly, compared to how I expected the game to go before it started, I wasn't that disappointed. It was at least it was a good, entertaining game. They played better than horseshit like they did last week. And, in a big moment when everybody in the country was watching, at least they represented themselves well. It wasn't obviously the outcome that they wanted, but it was kind of the outcome that everybody expected in the end. And so it's kind of, they were talking to the players after the game, asking them how they felt about it. You can't be too happy in that kind of situation because a loss is still a loss. And even though, you were expected to lose by 6.5 and you only lost by 1, so you can hang your hat on that a little bit, but you still wanted to win the game in the end, obviously. And so, Joe Burrow after the game was feeling very kind of emo, very sad, very down, as he is a lot of the time after these losses. They asked him, why do you feel so frustrated? Why does this one sting so bad? He said he didn't really know. He'd have to go back and watch the tape. I think he said part of it had to do with the fact that he fumbled the ball and they returned it for a touchdown. That was a big turning point. Gave the Chiefs the lead at that point in the game where the Bengals seemed to be in control and playing without any mistakes. So that was kind of the first critical mistake. And obviously, Dejon Anthony, the rookie, made a couple of big mistakes. And he only played 6 snaps in the entire game. So there was a few of them where he was making not so great plays on them. Not a great sample size for Dejon Anthony. Hopefully he has better games in his future. But it was just kind of weird. You're asking for a rookie 6th-round pick. Why is he playing, especially when he has so little experience? Like, why wasn't DJ Turner or one of the other more experienced, like Tyson Anderson or one of those safeties who's been with the Bengals for a while? Why did they have Dejon Anthony, a rookie who's playing in his basically 2nd game ever in the NFL, putting him out there on 4th and 16 against Patrick Mahomes? Seems pretty risky. So they might reconsider that going forward, who they want to put in the game in those situations. But hopefully Dejon Anthony can bounce back because I know they said he was looking very emotional in the locker room after the game, as I'm sure he would be, because I'm sure he feels like he cost the team the game. But it doesn't always come down to just one play. Obviously, there's a lot of plays, but he made multiple bad plays. But still, it doesn't come down to just 2 plays, but whatever. So after the game, Ja'Marr Chase was not addressing any questions. So they asked Zach Taylor, who cares what Zach Taylor says as usual, but they asked Zach Taylor, what was up with Ja'Marr Chase with the outburst on what would have been, 3rd down, and he got the unsportsmanlike conduct. He's like, I don't know, you have to ask him. And then they asked Joe Burrow kind of about it, but they asked him, like, is that the most upset you've ever seen Ja'Marr in your life, and what was up with that? And he just kind of referred questions to Ja'Marr because he said he didn't really know. They asked Ja'Marr about it after the game. He just said he wasn't going to talk about it. So any questions that they asked about it, he just said, I'm not going to talk about it, which is probably smart because he knew he was already going to be anticipating getting a fine for his actions on the field. No reason to make it even worse by saying something to just inflame the situation. So he just didn't talk about it. I think the Bengals are going to be happy just to move on from the entire situation and hope that that kind of thing doesn't linger on and continue happening. There's one situation in game 1 where Ja'Marr Chase got a penalty because when the Bengals needed to punt, he was still walking off the field. So instead of like sprinting to get off the field, it was at the end of the game, and I'm sure he was really tired at that point. But instead of running to get off the field, he just walked off the field. So the Bengals got a penalty for having too many players on the field at once. So he didn't really say anything about that. He didn't say anything about this situation. He didn't, say like, I shouldn't have done that, or wasn't remorseful at all. He just didn't address it in any way. So hopefully we don't continue to have situations where he's getting frustrated. But I can understand, people are like, why is he so frustrated? Well, obviously he's only getting paid like $1 million this year, and he has to now, instead of getting a big contract extension that he was looking for, now he's actually have to pay money to take out an insurance policy to make sure that he's protecting himself from injury. So I could totally understand where the frustration would come from. Instead of having a big $100 million payday come in, now you're having to pay for a big insurance policy. I understand why he would be frustrated totally. And that's not only to mention the fact that he wasn't able to do much in the game. If we hop over to the stats here, we can see that on the stat sheet, Ja'Marr Chase didn't have an extremely productive day. Bengals' leading receiver was actually Mike Gesicki. He had 7 catches on 9 targets for 91 yards. Jermaine Burton, 1 catch, 47 yards. Then Ja'Marr Chase, 4 catches on 5 targets for 35 yards. And they showed on at least one replay where the Chiefs were just double covering Ja'Marr with their top 2 defensive backs every play. And that's kind of how the Chiefs had played in the past. But what they would normally do was a lot of times they would put their top cornerback on T. Higgins and then double cover Ja'Marr Chase with their number 2 and number 3 defensive backs. In this game, since there's no T. Higgins, they don't really have that much respect for Andrei Iosivas in terms of an open field receiver or Trent Irwin or anybody else that they had out there. So they had a lot of focus on Ja'Marr Chase. The only catches he really had were short underneath routes. He couldn't get open in the open field. They didn't throw anything deep down to him. He was attracting a lot of attention if he ever went deep, but they threw it to Gesicki or Jermaine Burton a lot of time anyway. We also saw Eric All catch all 4 of his targets, 4 catches for 32 yards. Drew Sample, 3 catches, 28 yards. And Zach Moss had 1 catch for 13 yards. Andrei Iosivas, 2 catches, 7 yards, 2 touchdowns, though. So he didn't have almost second fewest yards of receiving, but 2 touchdowns, long of 4. Trenton Irwin, though, 1 catch on 6 targets for 5 yards, long of 5, obviously on 1 catch, and no touchdowns, and 1 that went off his face mask in the end zone. A lot of those, that's kind of deceiving because a lot of those throws were just kind of throwaway throws that Joe Burrow was getting rid of when he was down in the end zone. So they weren't like necessarily drops or anything by Trenton Irwin, but not a lot of production out of him either. I'm not going to be surprised if we see Jermaine Burton. Obviously, he's shown he's an explosive weapon. Need to start getting more Jermaine Burton, less Trenton Irwin in some of these plays. Just Joe Burrow overall, passing, he was 23 of 36, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3 sacks for 12 yards, compared to Patrick Mahomes, 18 of 25, only 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, 2 sacks for 14 yards. So if you just look at that headline, you would say that Joe Burrow really outplayed him. If you take like the quarterback rating, Joe Burrow had a passer rating of 103.7, Patrick Mahomes 80.6. Patrick Mahomes QBR, ESPN quarterback rating, which takes into account like situational decision making and stuff like that. Patrick Mahomes had out of 131, Joe Burrow got a 66. So Joe Burrow got a much better QBR score than Patrick Mahomes. You would say he outplayed him. That doesn't necessarily tell the whole story because Joe Burrow also had that fumble that turned into a touchdown for the defense. So uncharacteristically, if you look at Joe Burrow's career statistics going into this season, he had only fumbled the ball twice in his entire career. And already in this season, he's got 4 fumbles in 2 games. Now, in this game, one of those fumbles came when he was doing the center exchange with Ted Karras. So that counts as a fumble, even though it wasn't like an open field strip. But the fact that we have seen Joe Burrow in a lot of situations be able to hang on to the football. Now he's got 4 fumbles statistically already. And for me, I'm starting to wonder, is it an issue of grip strength with his hand? Because he's got that surgery on his wrist and his throwing hand where he's trying to grip the ball. That's probably caused him to lose some dexterity, lose some flexibility, and maybe even some grip strength. We know, I don't want to keep harping this all the time, but we know that Joe Burrow doesn't have the biggest hands in the world. They're a little bit below average hand size for an NFL quarterback. So he's already at a bit of a disadvantage trying to hold on to the ball. Now he's got to have surgery on the wrist. That may impact how he's able to grip it. So hopefully this doesn't become a trend. He's going to have to make sure he's conscious of holding on to the ball tightly, because when you have Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and those type of guys coming in and sacking you, it's going to be that much more important to grip the ball tightly. Bengals running the ball, though, Chase Brown was probably the most effective runner. Chase Brown got 4 carries for 31 yards, average of 7.8, whereas Zach Moss got 12 carries for 34 yards, average of 2.8. So Chase Brown averaging 3 times more yards per carry, but it's situational. Zach Moss was in situations where maybe they're expecting run more so. Can't necessarily say that, one running back would have gotten the same yards on different plays, but not a great running performance from the Bengals just as a team. They only managed 74 yards combined for the entire team. Like I mentioned, the Chiefs managed 149. Isaiah Pacheco had 19 carries for 90 yards, 4.7 per carry, only a long of 11. And that was the longest run the Chiefs had all day. So they weren't really getting long runs just consistently, like 8 yards, 9 yards, seemed like, without even having to break a sweat on the Bengals. And that's going to be a concern moving forward because, like we said, B.J. Hill, Sheldon Rankins out of this game with hamstring injuries. Bengals defensive interior is going to continue to probably give up a lot of yards against teams that are effective at running the ball. But just looking at the team statistics, Bengals had more first downs, 11 first downs to 7 first downs. They had more total yards than the Chiefs, 320 to 286. Number of plays was about even. Bengals had 61 to the Chiefs 59. So Bengals last week, I think they only ran 48 plays of offense the entire game against the Patriots. 61, that's more towards a normal number of plays in a game. Bengals had a decent number of yards per play on the Chiefs defense, 5.2 yards per play to the Chiefs 4.8. So that was an improvement over whatever it was, like 2.5 or 3 yards last week. So, over 200 yards passing, 246 passing, improvement for Burrow of almost 100. They did give up 3 sacks, and they got doubled up rushing, but number of rushing attempts, still only 22. They're not really a rushing team, so if you count the sacks, they had about 40, and some of Joe Burrow's scrambles were actually passes to also, so it's still like 2-1 passing to rushing ratio for the Bengals. Penalties was one of the big things for the Bengals, especially that like 29-yard penalty at the end there. But 8 penalties for 79 yards for the Bengals compared to 4 penalties for 44 yards. Most of those were holding and illegal hands to the face against Trey Hendrickson. But the Bengals won the turnover margin. They forced 3 turnovers and only gave up 1. But most of the time you win games like that, but it didn't go in the Bengals' favor. Part of it was just not converting some of those drives from field goals into touchdowns. Defense for the Chiefs were able to capitalize and turn one of their turnovers into a defensive touchdown, so they kind of gave them an extra drive. And you just somehow, some way, you knew the Chiefs were going to figure out a way to do it. And the margins of victory in the Chiefs games are always so tight. They're 2-0. Bengals are 0-2. The Chiefs could just as easily be 0-2. And Bengals, if Tanner Hudson didn't fumble and, if different things went the way for the Bengals, obviously they could be 2-0. So it's always that's what is so fun about being an NFL fan is you never know. The games aren't like 56-0 blowouts most of the time. And you never know which way it's going to go, like I said, at any given Sunday. So that's how this game played out. It was disappointing to lose, but that's how the NFL goes. You lose games sometimes, but at least it was a good one. Now, looking forward after this, week 3, they're going to be playing on Monday Night Football against the Washington Commanders. Monday night, that's going to be another primetime game. Good opportunity to hopefully get in on the winning column. But you don't want to have an emotional letdown after a big, hyped-up game like this. Now the Bengals need to regroup, refocus, and figure out how they're going to come back and attack the next opponent, not dwell on this loss too much. You just got to have short memory, got to be professional, and get back on the horse and get back to it. But overall takeaway from the game, like I said, I felt good. It felt encouraging that the Bengals were going to be a competitive, professional football team and not look like total garbage like they did. So it was encouraging for the weeks moving forward, but constant improvement. You can't just say, because they were saying, oh, week one, some of the reporters were asking him, have you showed that this is really the team that you are? Like week one, that didn't really count. That wasn't really you guys. Now this is the real Bengals, right? And you can't really say like, oh, we weren't really playing in week one. Like, no, whatever you put on tape, that's who you are. Whatever you show is what you are. So you can't hide from the performance that they put out there week one. It was whatever they put on tape. But now maybe they've taken the step forward to figure out how to put a game plan together, get prepared, and go out there and dominate a team that they should be able to beat at home in the Command. That's going to do it for this episode of the Bengal Bites podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all the loyal listeners sticking through it. Even though the season was off to a little bit of a rocky start, that's just how the Bengals do. 0-2 is nothing they're not familiar with. That's how they go to the Super Bowl. So apparently this is the recipe for success under Zach Taylor, if you define success as losing more games than you win. But anyway, we'll come back with the next episode to preview that big Monday Night Football Ring of Honor game right here. So I'll see you back here next time. I'll leave it with a hooday. Stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.